All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating analysis that connects the dots between modern pop culture, yep, we're talking fandoms, and a deep historical crisis of meaning that's been brewing for centuries.
So, have you ever been to a concert or seen clips of fans in Japan engaged in what they call oshikatsu, this incredibly avid support for an idol or character, and just thought to yourself, wow, this feels almost spiritual? The energy, the shared rituals, that sense of community, it's just so powerful. But what if it's way more than just entertainment?
The analysis we're digging into today makes a really bold claim. It says that this intense fandom isn't about people trying to escape reality. Nope, it's actually a symptom of something much deeper. A collective, and maybe even unconscious, search for the meaning, connection, and transcendence that our modern society has kinda pushed to the side. To really get this, we first need to zoom out a bit, because this personal search for meaning is tied to a huge, mind-bending paradox at the very heart of our globalized world. Okay, so this slide shows something that seems totally backward, right? What you're seeing is that the most developed, wealthiest, most advanced nations are also the ones with the highest rates of mental and spiritual distress. It's a paradox. So the big question is, why? Why does more progress seem to lead to more pain? Well, this analysis argues that the root of the problem goes way, way back, all the way to the philosophical foundations of the modern Western world. It really starts with a couple of game-changing ideas. First, you have Descartes, who basically split the world into two separate things: physical, measurable matter on one side and the immeasurable mind or spirit on the other. Then, the Enlightenment came along and put humanity right at the center of the universe, saying our reason is the ultimate tool to understand everything. It was a revolution in thought, for sure, but it came with a hidden price tag. And what was that price? It was a massive shrinking of what we even considered to be real. Get this number, 0.0035%. That's the tiny, tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum our eyes can actually see. The analysis argues that Western science basically looked at that tiny sliver and said, yep, that's it, that's objective reality. Everything else, the unmeasurable, the spiritual, not real. And this slide really just lays out the fundamental clash. On one side, you have the Western worldview that puts all its chips on what's measurable, material, and human-centric. But on the other, you have so many indigenous and holistic worldviews that see reality as unmeasurable, spiritual, and all about relationships, where humans are just one small part of a huge, interconnected ecosystem. Look, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate. This clash had devastating real-world consequences. For Native Americans, for example, their sacred land was suddenly just an economic resource. Their ancient spiritual practices were dismissed as superstition, and policies like forced boarding schools were designed to literally erase their entire worldview and replace it with a rational, material one. This all leads us to the central idea in this analysis: the destruction of our spiritual ecosystem. And the argument is that this wasn't just an attack on one culture, but on a way of being human that, turns out, we all desperately need. The analysis uses this really powerful analogy: spiritual monoculture. Think about farming. A monoculture is when you replace a diverse, resilient ecosystem with just one single crop. Well, the argument is that our modern society did the same thing with meaning, replacing a whole forest of ways to find purpose with just one single approved path. And what is that one path? Well, here it is. Life gets boiled down to this simple, linear formula: pursue personal success, which is mostly defined by making money so you can buy more stuff. That's it. That becomes the main and sometimes only path to a valuable life. So you gotta ask, what happens to us when that's the only game in town? What essential nutrients for the soul are missing when that rich, diverse ecosystem of meaning just gets paved over? According to this analysis, these are the critical things we've lost: the power of myth and ritual, that deep, bedrock feeling of belonging to a real community, a real, tangible connection to the natural world, a sense of transcendent meaning, a belief in something bigger than our day-to-day grind, and maybe, most importantly, the freedom to have a purpose that isn't just about being useful or making money. And here's the absolute kicker. Just because society started ignoring these needs didn't mean they just, poof, vanished. You can't just reason away a fundamental part of being human.
No, these deep needs for myth, for community, for meaning, they were just repressed. They were driven underground, waiting for a new way to surface.
And this right here is where we come full circle. The whole argument is that these parts of pop culture that we often write off as silly or escapist are actually the cracks in the pavement where those deep, starved spiritual needs are finally, powerfully re-emerging into the light.
So, this isn't seen as a problem or a step backward. Instead, the analysis frames this whole phenomenon as something incredibly hopeful, a kind of collective, unconscious attempt by humanity to repair itself.
I mean, just look at the slide. It breaks it down so clearly. You can draw these direct parallels. The role of a sacred object, once held by a saint's relic, is now filled by an idol or a favorite character. The ancient ritual of a pilgrimage, its modern echo, is going to a concert. The congregation is now the fandom. And the sacred texts, the stories that teach us and give us meaning, are now manga or the deep lore of a video game.
And this just reframes everything, doesn't it? From this point of view, a fan spending their time and money on their Oshi, their favorite, isn't just being a mindless consumer. They're taking part in a deeply human act. They're rebuilding a system of meaning for themselves in a world that pretty much took the old one away. It's an intuitive, profound attempt at spiritual recovery. And at the end of the day, that is the big takeaway here. This whole phenomenon is a powerful sign of just how resilient our core human needs are. You can try to suppress them, you can call them irrational, you can build an entire society that pretends they don't exist, but you can never, ever get rid of them. They will always find a new shape, a new voice, a new way to be heard.
So, we're left with this one last really big question to chew on. Could it be that the very things we so often dismiss as simple, trivial entertainment are actually serving a vital therapeutic function for our entire culture? Is our pop culture, in its own weird and wonderful way, trying to heal the very wounds that modernity inflicted on the human spirit? Definitely something to think about.